So we all know by now that critics aren't too fond of Anthem, but we haven't heard much in terms of sales. Normally when a game company sells a game and it does really well commercially, they'll show that off, talk about how they sold this many million copies in this short amount of time. We have heard nothing on that front from Anthem, not to mention that early signs all around seem to indicate that Anthem sales aren't super hot right now. Apparently Anthem only pushed half the physical copies that Andromeda managed to push within their launch periods in the UK. Digital sales are on the rise, but not to the point where it would cause a 50% discrepancy. This kind of discrepancy seems to indicate that there is a general sense of disinterest towards the game, especially after the reviews flooded out and after the game got a pretty meager reception. Now, you may recall that before the game came out, I believe this was back in February, EA said that they expect to sell between 5 to 6 million Anthem units before the end of March. Now, at the time, when I first heard about this, I was very skeptical that Anthem was actually going to be able to achieve those results unless this game turned out to be a home run. But as many people saw coming, Anthem did in fact have a troubled launch. The content just wasn't there, the loot system sucked, the endgame is completely lackluster, and it's the biggest issue plaguing Anthem right now. There's just very little reason to keep coming back to it, to keep playing it. There's no sense of progression, the rewards are just awful. It's just a game that's been very poorly designed. So naturally, reviews were pretty scalding. It is BioWare's lowest rated game by a mile. And the question is, how has all of this ultimately affected sales? Did Anthem manage to pull off the 5 to 6 million units figures before the end of March? What's going on? Well, providing answers to that question is none other than EA CEO Andrew Wilson, who recently hosted an earnings report during which, according to website GameSpot, he simply had this to say: "The launch of Anthem did not meet our expectations." In other words, the game probably sold less than 5 million units before the end of March. Now, Andrew Wilson didn't provide specific sales figures. He probably doesn't want to face the embarrassment, but I can only surmise that the game sold between 3 to 4 million copies, or at least that's where the figures were before the end of March, and they might be a little higher now, but it's not selling at a rate that is ideal for EA. And, for any other game, this would actually be considered pretty good sales. But this is EA we're talking about. They set incredibly lofty goals that are just completely unreasonable. Even when games sell a few million copies, even when they make their money back, EA may deem them a failure if they don't meet the ridiculous numbers. That's kind of what happened with Mass Effect Andromeda. It sold a couple million units, it actually made money back, but EA decided that just wasn't enough because nothing is enough for EA, so they just went right ahead and shut down BioWare Montreal and put the entire Mass Effect franchise on ice. And now with Anthem, even though it did actually sell a couple million units, even though it sold reasonably well and probably made a decent amount of money, EA is deeming it a failure by their criteria, by their own standards. Now, unlike with Andromeda, EA is insisting that they are planning to support Anthem long-term, that they're committed towards keeping this live service alive. I guess we'll have to see if that actually holds true. I keep getting the sense that Anthem is a dead project walking, that sooner rather than later, we might see it just get shut down because the player base is hemorrhaging out due to the fact that, the entire roadmap got delayed recently, the content updates have been meager, the patches have been 1 step forward, 2 steps back. Months after launch, the game's still in a horrible state, and people are losing their patience very quickly. Moving on, another topic of discussion during the earnings report, as transcribed by PC Gamer, was why Andrew believes Anthem failed, and he attributed this failure to old conventions, old methods of releasing games. Here's what he said specifically. "The reality is it's not just an EA challenge, it's an industry-wide challenge," CEO Andrew Wilson said during the call, referencing the difficulties of creating and operating large-scale open-world games like Anthem. "You're moving from what was initially a BioWare game, which would be somewhere between 40 and 80 hours of offline play, to 40 to 80 hours of offline play plus 100 or 200, 300 hours of elder game that happens with millions millions of other players at scale online. What the fuck is he talking about when he says offline? There is no offline mode in Anthem. Even if you just want to tackle the campaign by yourself, you have to log into the game and be online. That's how the game works. Also, Andrew is kidding himself when he says that Anthem's campaign is between 40 to 80 hours. In my personal experience, I clocked in about 20 hours before the campaign was over, and that's including that one grind wall of a mission, the Tombs of Legionnaires, which took a couple hours by itself. So yeah, the campaign that they're touting isn't nearly as long as Andrew is insinuating. Anyway, PC Gamer proceeded to paraphrase some other things Andrew had to say about how he believes there needs to be a different approach to launching games moving forward. The article reads, quote, EA is also examining how it presents new games to potential audiences with an eye towards managing expectations. Wilson said that in Asia, major online games generally go through a soft launch and multiple community tests before everything goes live, which enables EA to get a better idea of how they'll behave at scale. In the West, however, major publishers have stuck with older conventions, a drip feed approach to marketing to build up the appetite and excitement for the game that leads straight into release. PC Gamer then directly quoted Andrew Wilson, who added this: as games have gotten bigger, that system isn't working as well as it has done in years gone by. So what you should expect from us is that it's not just about changing the development processes in the game, it's not just about changing the QA process in the game, although both of those things are being changed dramatically inside our organization right now, but it also comes down to changing how we launch games. We should expect that we'll start to test things like soft launches, the same things that you see in the mobile space right now. And it also comes down to changing how we communicate with players. Our entire marketing organization now is moving out of presentation mode and into conversation mode, and changing how we interact with players over time. The fact that Andrew can just throw around the word mobile so casually into this conversation just goes to show where his priorities actually lie. I'm sure Andrew Wilson would like nothing more than for AAA premium price games to be treated and monetized like these cash grab, egregious mobile games. Now, I'd like to discuss what Andrew said about soft launches. He's treating this like it's some new concept that only happens in Asia, but soft launches are exactly what AAA live services are employing nowadays. They're releasing these shells as games as if they were final products, using roadmaps to justify their incomplete state, and then these roadmaps are exploited to drip feed content post-launch that should have been in the base game from the outset. This is the strategy that they'll use to basically finish a game after they've got your money, after they've shipped a compromised product. They'll dangle a schedule for updates that may or may not pan out. In the case of Anthem, it's certainly not panning out. The whole roadmap was delayed, and it's a disaster. This is the direction that Andrew seemingly wants to take games into, this idea of soft launches that will only give EA more of an excuse to rush games and launch them incomplete. You know, one thing Andrew never mentions throughout this whole discussion? The fact that Anthem just wasn't a good game. It couldn't possibly be that the generally negative reception towards Anthem dissuaded consumers from buying the product. No, he has to blame everything else. He has to blame how the game was launched and all these other things that have nothing to do with the game's merits. It's like he doesn't understand that people, when they spend money, they're hoping to get something good out of it. They're hoping to get good products out of their purchases. This notion that the games industry needs to change how they launch games in order to make them sell better, it's bullshit. I can bet you that if Anthem had garnered critical acclaim, if people loved this game and talked about it and spread the word about how good this game is, had that been the case, yeah, there would have been a much greater chance that Anthem Sales would have met EA's expectations, possibly exceeded them. Now, Andrew Wilson extrapolated further on his belief that game launches need to change, and PC Gamer transcribed his statements as follows. Wilson believes that change in approach should help ensure that games run better and more reliably when they go fully live, and will also help players understand exactly what it is that they're going to be playing and how they're going to be playing both on the day of launch and over time. We think that we're in a really good position for this. I think this gets really hard if you don't have scale to do this, and so we feel very good about it, Wilson said. And over time, we hope that we can lead from the front and help other developers and publishers change the way they do things as well. Hell no, keep your goddamn methods to yourself. The last thing I want is for any developer or publisher to follow in EA's footsteps. So once again, notice that the entire conversation revolves around business strategies and schemes rather than the quality quality of the game itself. He never says, maybe we should just start shipping better games. Maybe we should delay games when they're not ready to be launched. Maybe if we ship good products that people desire, they'll buy them. Also, I'm really worried about this quote. Wilson believes that change in approach should help ensure that games run better and more reliably when they fully go live. It almost sounds like Andrew Wilson's planning to release more games in an unfinished state and just label them as not having fully gone live to justify rushing games to release, to justify releasing unfinished products. So hypothetically, with Anthem, EA might say that, the game is in a compromised state, it's buggy, it's lackluster in terms of content, it's in a broken state, because it's still in soft launch mode. We haven't fully launched the game yet, that's down the line. Again, it's not about finding ways to improve the quality of their games, it's always about scheming, about twisting the message, of playing with the consumer's perception. This is what they try to do when Andromeda failed and Blake Jorgensen said that, players just don't like single-player games like they used to anymore, in an attempt to justify the fact that Andromeda just didn't meet sales expectations, to excuse the fact that they were essentially abandoning single-player games outright. They try to spread this false message that single-player games are no longer relevant when that is far from the truth. Titles like God of War and Spider-Man, single-player games, sold gangbusters. Capcom recently reached new heights in terms of profits because of sales from titles like Resident Evil 2 Remake as well as Devil May Cry 5, both linear single-player experiences. With Andromeda, much like with Anthem, instead of just blaming the fact that the game launched in a poor state, EA blamed everything else. EA blamed an entire genre of games. EA blamed the consumers for not being interested in the genre when in reality, it's just that we're not interested in poorly shipped games. That's all it really comes down to. If a game's good, we'll buy it. Simple as that. Yeah, Andrew Wilson just comes off as woefully tone-deaf and misguided here. It's like he's in denial. It's like he can't accept this notion that good games sell. He's doubling down on all the things that made Anthem fail, this drip feeding of content, the soft launch thing that ultimately didn't pan out because the game was so fundamentally broken that even with the feedback BioWare got from the demo, they just couldn't fix everything in time. EA is seemingly going to release games even more unfinished and call them soft launches, split them up into more pieces, further exploit roadmaps as a way to develop games after they have been sold. It sounds to me like EA is further committing to releasing half-baked products and to treating AAA games like they were mobile games. You know what, EA? You can keep living in your own bubble if you want. Keep being surprised that your games aren't meeting expectations. Plenty of other great games out there to look forward to, made by companies with a mindset of balancing passionate creativity, consumer friendliness, and good business. These are one man's take on the whole situation anyway. I'd love to hear what you think about Andrew Wilson's recent statements in the comments below. With that, I would like to end this news update and discussion video. Thank you for tuning in. With that, I would like to end this news update and discussion video. Thank you for tuning in. To be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.